Hi, and welcome to our Boston University video blog. We are thrilled you could join us. My name is Miranda, and I'm a junior at Boston University studying public relations.
Hi, my name is Joanna Tulman, and I'm a senior at Boston University studying international relations.
Together for our History of Boston class, under the supervision of Professor Allison, we seek to deconstruct one of the most widely acclaimed but equally disturbing occurrences of American history in the 17th century, the Salem Witch Trials.
We are aware that these witch trials, which have garnered a lot of public attention since their occurrence in 1692, have most likely impacted on you, our viewers. For this reason, we ask you to take a moment and think about what you already know about the Salem witch trials, no matter how much or how little.
Certainly, every Halloween, there is an eerie sentiment throughout New England, and that touches the deepest and darkest part of our minds. In the sense, the Salem witch trials, particularly in the fall, are just as much a part of our past as they are our present. However, the students of Boston University history, we have an obligation to dispel the many myths and do our best to find at least some portion of the truth.
It is for this reason that we've decided to work in conjunction to tell the story of Salem, one of the first settlements in the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
We will seek to tell the story of Salem in 4 segments. First, we will introduce you to the town of Salem, what was going on at this time in colonial history, and the underlying currents that gave way to this hysteric breakout.
Then we thought it best to give you an overall knowledge of the witch trials that were happening not only in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, but also across the ocean around Europe. The witch trials of Salem were no anomaly, and in fact, this kind of scapegoating hysteria was occurring in many places at once.
Third, we would like to discuss the opinions of 2 of the most acclaimed Salem historians, Stephen Nissenbaum and Paul Boyer. After reading Salem Possessed, we found this is a very helpful source as it was objective and gave a lot of the underlying currents that gave way to the Salem witch trials. Hence, a lot of the information we will convey to you in this blog will be from their research.
Lastly, we would like to provide you with our thoughts on Salem, as the 2 of us have just visited the town last weekend. We would like to speak to our own perspectives as well.
With that, we would like to begin. The community of Salem Village, a part of Essex County, Massachusetts, was founded in 1626 by Roger Connaught, a professional salter from London who arrived in Plymouth in 1623. Opposed to the Pilgrims of Plymouth, he founded Salem and became the first governor of the English settlers from 1626 to 1628.
Connaught, a fierce fisherman and trader, was taken with the geography of Salem. It had a fine natural harbor with networks of rivers providing access to the interior, which made it an ideal spot for fishing and trading posts. After 1630, there was a wave of Puritan immigrants, all seeking to set root on the soil of Salem, a once fertile and easy land for agriculture.
However, 3 decades later, the soil was proving difficult for the settlers and was stripped of necessary nutrients from overfarming. It was clear to the upper echelons of puritanical Salem society that there needed to be additional sources of land for the people. Hence, the only Salem town was suddenly bordered by a new grant of land, Salem Village.
Quickly, Salem Town and Salem Village drew sharp distinctions. While both harbored Puritans, the nature of work, faith, and wealth distribution was quite different from one another. We will begin with Salem Town as it was first in existence. And Salem Town, by and large, was indebted to its natural assets, its deep harbor, and its excellent network of waterways. Remember, this is what first drew Roger Connaught to the area of Salem. As a result, Salem Town was a village of merchants, sailors, and commercial enterprise. We will further refer to the inhabitants of Salem Town as the townsmen.
Invested in their business transactions, the townsmen, however, did not want to lose control of the royal hinterland, which not only increased her tax revenues, but provided the food with which the town proper could not supply. This royal hinterland, Salem Village, bore inhabitants which we will refer to as the farmers. From 1640 to 1660, neighboring farm towns such as Wenham, Manchester, Marblehead, and Beverly broke away from Salem Town, and in a last-ditch effort, the townsmen made a last-ditch effort to hold on to Salem Village, particularly as these farmers began showing signs of dissent.
It was clear that in the time leading up to 1692, there was an intense divergence between the two interest groups. Scores of petitions, resolutions, depositions, and protests bear witness to the tenacity and ingenuity with which both sides pursued this conflict. Reading Salem Possessed by Paul Nissenbaum and Stephen Boyer, we came away confident that this historic episode could not have been the result of one thing. In fact, it is the only thing we can say confidently. This outbreak in the Massachusetts Bay Colony was the result of many dark and sinister forces converging, not one singular reason.
As explained in Salem Possessed by Boyer and Nissenbaum, there are a number of currents that led to this episode. First, Salem village farmers wanted to be released from providing men for a night watch over Salem town. This not only did not make sense logically, but it forced the farmers to leave their duties and walk close to 10 miles to keep watch at nighttime.
Secondly, the Salem farmers had no ecclesiastical apparatus of their own, so families were expected to walk miles to go to the meeting house in Salem town. These issues gave way and ultimately resulted in tensions that were inherent in an anomalous legal and ecclesiastical situation. At the crux of this, we have some Salem village farmers striving to define their own political and religious power more broadly, and some continuing to identify themselves primarily with the Salem town. This caused not only sharp divisions between Salem town and Salem village, but also pitted intense rivalries between individuals in Salem village, dependent on those who wanted to remain loyal to the town and those who wanted to break apart. The fact that Salem village's status was uncertain seems to have contributed to a strikingly high level of internal bickering and disarray.
Third, the fragmentation and dislocation of society during King William's War, which was the first of 6 colonial wars fought between New France and New England. Studying local records, it was clear to Nissenbaum and Boyer that these high levels of societal stress due to King William's War gave way to societal dislocation.
Fourth, implications from unmarried and older women in society. They comprised a large number of the accused because they were dependent and completely at the will of the society.
Fifth, there was a serious and deeply embedded conflict within Salem Village, which was inflamed by a heavy conflict between the Porter family and the Putnam family. An already tense environment was made worse by boundary disputes, issues over control over the church, flooding each other's farms, political disagreements over taxation, and overall alliances that built themselves around the two families. This perhaps was the most important spark which split society in Salem in half.
The sixth and final issue Boyer and Nissenbaum provide to their readers is a land squeeze within Salem Village. Because Salem Village had such high fertility rates and low mortality rates, the land quickly became overpopulated. This caused serious issues with land inheritances. In Massachusetts Bay, land tended to be divided between children. With all of these historical currents coming together, the infamous Salem witch trials began during the spring of 1692, after a group of young girls in Salem Village claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. The two categories of evidence, direct confession and empirical proof of supernatural attributes, were by far the strongest and most acceptable.
As a wave of hysteria spread throughout colonial Massachusetts, a special court convened in Salem to hear the cases. The first convicted witch was Bridget Bishop, and she was hung that June. 18 others followed Bishop to Salem's Gallows Hill, while some 150 more men, women, and children were accused over the next several months.
For while outsiders suddenly became aware of the village in 1692 and pondered the implications of this ordeal for their world, it was the men, the women of this village itself, and its children too, who are the most directly and profoundly implicated in this event. And it is their history we must understand if we ever hope to understand 1692.
Having a basic understanding of what happened at these witch trials, Joanna and I felt it important that we research witch trials on a larger scale than just colonial America.
Studies prove that witch trials like those seen in Salem were no historical anomaly. In fact, throughout the course of the 17th century in Tudor England, there was a large amount of witch persecution. From 1484 to 1750, roughly 200,000 witches were tortured, burned, and hung across Western Europe. In the modern-day Czech Republic, then Northern Moravia, Heinrich Franz Boblig von Edelstadt acted as an imperial lay inquisitor who led witch trials in the late 17th century. He was responsible for the burning of approximately 100 people, which included 2 priests who attempted to stop these trials. These witch trials and this kind of hysteria was not specific to Salem, and the fact that these occurred on 2 separate continents at the exact same time tell a lot about where history was.
We are going to share our Salem experiences with you, our viewers. We were delighted to be able to visit Salem, as it is only a 45-minute train ride from Boston's North Station.
Upon arriving to the village, you immediately feel the energy of the town. You can't miss all of the Halloween-themed storefronts. We also encountered a variety of guided tours being advertised, as seen in our pamphlets. These are only a few of them, and we collected them while on our trip.
All of the tours had different themes. Some were ghost-related, while others were related to the witch trials, the hangings, and the town of Salem itself. What we both found so interesting was how the town commercializes the events that took place in Salem, and they really do make money off of it. You have to pay to go to a tour. And once you get off the train and wander down Washington Street a bit, you're flooded with spooky images and people dressed up in costumes. And I just thought it was really enjoyable to see all that and immediately feel the energy when you got off the train.
What I loved seeing actually was all the families traveling to Salem. The children were dressed up in their own Halloween costumes, and they were so excited to see the village. I think it was definitely to our advantage to go to Salem, closer to Halloween time. The energy there is unmatched. Miranda, you've only been there once before, right?
Yeah, I actually went last year with a couple of friends from school, and we went a little bit later in the afternoon, around the same time. And the difference was, like, when you arrive later in the afternoon, I feel like you see the older people dressed up and it gets a little bit more spooky.
Right.
We were also waiting online for a haunted house. So you get scared by just like people dressed up with really crazy makeup. They'll come over to you and try to scare you and your friends. Like, one of my friends was standing right in front of me and he came up behind my shoulder. But then when we got there at like 11:15, and it was just a little bit different because you see a lot of younger kids.
Right.
Like 11:15 a.m. they're just like getting there with their families and they're dressed up and they're enjoying all the fun things about it, and it's not really as scary, even though it always has that spooky element because of the graveyard,
of course,
and all of that. But it definitely at night is really lively, and like
it really seems like the energy is so different from day to night.
Yeah. Oh, also, I feel like we were reminded of being at home in New York because of the street performers and the crowds they got.
Totally.
Like, did you feel like you were back in the city? It was so crazy. Everyone cheering.
Yeah, really.
But overall, the trip to Salem was really fun and really insightful. We definitely learned a lot. We walked around the Salem Museum, which gave us a lot of history. They just have all different panels about Salem and different photographs and artifacts. Some of them are replicas. But I think I would definitely go back for a third time, and I think Joe would go for a second.
Definitely. It was definitely a huge highlight of my senior year thus far at BU. And I definitely would like to bring my family back to see Salem. Very different than what I always imagined in The Crucible when I would read that when I was younger. But at the same time, there is definitely something spooky going on in Salem. And I await our next trip together. And with that, we want to thank you all for watching our first of 3 video blogs. It was great having you.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.